At 6, a mystery in Fairfield. Over the past few years, someone has been buying up a lot of land around Travis Air Force Base in Solano County. Now here's the catch. The government says it knows nothing about the buyer or what the buyer wants to do with the land.
We need that land around Travis Air Force Base protected.
But Fairfield Mayor Catherine Moy is extremely worried that a corporation that's bought thousands of acres of land encircling Travis Air Force Base could be up to no good.
It's over 50,000 acres of land. They're the largest landholder in Solano County now.
Tannery Associates LLC has spent nearly $900 million on land around the Air Force Base. But nobody knows precisely who they are or what they intend to do with the property.
The bottom line question, who the hell are these people? We still don't know.
Congressman John Garamendi says national security could be at risk. He says the FBI and the Treasury Department are investigating.
It's very concerning of the land that they have purchased, which is right up against the fence on 3 sides of the base, positioning whoever is there to be in a place to gain intelligence, information, or possibly to disrupt operations.
Now, over the past few days, Solano County residents have been getting surveys, both online and by phone, about plans for a ballot initiative to create a new city that would include tens of thousands of new homes, a solar energy farm, and 10,000 acres of parks and open space. George Kennedy was pulled by phone. He says the caller claimed the city would feel like a college town, include a new aqueduct system, and restore ecological habitats. He says it all sounded way too good to be true.
It just, doesn't pass the smell test to me.
They want to build a city, yet they haven't talked to anybody here.
Moy says if the new landowners incorporate their own city, they can rezone the land and issue their own building permits.
That's a really good point. And it brings in the rest of the nation, right? We're talking specifically about this very large, very well-funded, highly notarized type group here. But this is happening across the United States. I was just teaching a course last week where a land professional from North Dakota was asking, can I find all of Bill Gates's properties using this tool?
Okay, so that is the intersection that I spoke of, the intersection between my world, the world of the stories we cover on this channel, and this seemingly independent, separate, unrelated story unfolding next to Travis Air Force Base in Solano County. Now, I'm not going to speak on Bill Gates, okay? We're not going to get into conspiracy theories here, but it's true. Right now, part of the strategic trends that are projected moving forward is a fortification of the U.S. homeland. Under the new military doctrine, the homeland is no longer a sanctuary. In other words, we are turning inward and we're trying to modernize and fortify our bases and installations at home on U.S. soil to combat the emerging new age next generation threats. Hypersonic missiles, for example, are on the horizon with all globe strike capabilities. Technology is rapidly advancing, getting increasingly powerful, all in the hands of civilians. And those civilians can do increasing amounts of damage to physical infrastructure due to the integration of the digital world with the physical world through Internet of Things technology, okay? That is the motivator, the chief agent driving the doctrine change of the homeland is no longer a sanctuary, okay? That's what I'll refer to it as. And that began really taking the forefront of focus back in 2018. So Craig is right, this is happening across the country, and we will see more of this. It will come in different forms, like he said, happening all across the country.
So we researched Red River Trust from North Dakota, and we identified every single one of these properties within a few seconds, right? Same thing we did here. And I think that's a very strong role for land professionals like yourself to interact and expand your business.
There has been an ongoing issue. This falls into a larger geopolitical picture. It's not just Bill Gates and conspiracy theorists that are worried, about Bill Gates' purchase of agricultural space. There's an increasing focus on food security and protecting our nation's food and rural agricultural spaces. We're entering a new age. We're about to emerge on the other side of the old world, and this new world is one filled with asymmetrical threats, unconventional warfare, and forms of warfare that you have yet to even fully understand, right? People don't understand yet that information warfare is in full effect. It has been for quite some time, and it's only going to get creepier, stranger. The truth is going to become increasingly difficult to discern and separate from fiction. Okay, this is the new scale, the new age of warfare, and Flannery, the land acquisitions outside Travis, this is sort of happening within that context, and it's a matter of how related is that story to these trends.
In the U.S. And so, again, we just really need to, I think we need to be advocates and as land professionals for understanding what our natural resources are being used for, and land being number one. So with that being said, farmland foreign buyers, lawmakers in more than 24 states have passed or considered legislation restricting Chinese purchases of U.S. farmland.
Seems reasonable enough. Everything she just said seems like a reasonable proposition. Why would we not want to know who is buying our land here if they're foreign, right? We don't want to scare away foreign land investors and these great collaborative opportunities. Doesn't matter where you're from, right? Good ideas make themselves known. We don't want to just shut those down. But here's the issue. We know how Chinese intelligence and statecraft operates. It works different than the way that we gather intelligence. Think of the 1,000 Talents program. What happens is they send children over here to just live normal lives. Like you could be friends with these people. They could be upstanding, just great people you love, right? People that might as well be part of your family. You went to school with them, they grew up with you, whatever. Being as there is no separation between the Chinese military, the Chinese government, and Chinese civilians and civilian business, that means they're all one entity. So in other words, that means if a Chinese manufacturing company buys land in the United States, that is immediately just by default an offshoot of the Chinese military. And obviously, we're not in the greatest standing with China. We haven't been for a long time, just in case you've been living under a rock, right? We're not going to get too deep into the geopolitics behind that. But there's been a lot of tension recently. And you have to remember we had the Chinese spy balloon incident earlier this year, right at the beginning of 2023, because what happened there? It flew over multiple sensitive military installations, I believe 2 of which housed nuclear-capable aircrafts. We're talking Malmstrom. I believe the balloon also flew over a different Air Force base in, was it Utah? Was it North Dakota? North Dakota. We'll double check that. So as Craig said, Bill Gates has been buying farmland. Comparatively, it's really not that much, but there is a larger agriculture war going on right now. And this is an example. Security concerns grow over Chinese project near U.S. Air Force Base. This is a piece from a year ago.
Growing concerns in America's heartland over a 300-acre plot of farmland recently bought by a U.S. company that happens to have some ties to China. The company says it wants to build a corn milling plant, but there's a U.S. Air Force base just 20 minutes away from the farmland in question. The multi-million-dollar development raising some eyebrows all the way back in Washington, D.C. Our Eamon Javers took a closer look.
This is Grand Forks Air Force Base in North Dakota, home of some of the nation's most sensitive technology, including the RQ-4 Global Hawk surveillance drone. And this property sits just about 20 minutes down the road, more than 300 acres of prime farmland.
So 2 things. I'm going to interject in the middle of these videos because you have to pay attention to certain things. What did they just say there? Why might that base be of interest to an adversary nation of whom we're currently in conflict with? High technology. All of this is about high technology. There's an undercurrent to this Flannery Associates land acquisition story that's about high technology, smart city technology, and the next generation world of threats that we're entering.
This is Grand Forks Air Force Base in North Dakota, home of some of the nation's most sensitive technology, including the RQ-4 Global Hawk surveillance drone.
Drone, right? It's a surveillance drone. Unmanned aerial systems are the big push right now. DARPA is currently working on not only unmanned swarming technology, which is sets of drones, up to like 300 drones controlled by VR headsets and swarm commanders. How cool of a title is that, by the way? Swarm commanders. These are going to be autonomous drones capable of navigating urban spaces. Remember, the future of warfare is urban. That is the general consensus among all the military strategists. It's in the reports. This is why DARPA has been holding those contests. They call it the subterranean challenges. All of that is in preparation of urban warfare and developing technology quicker than the adversary can. And when it comes to China and their behavior, we know that one of their tactics is intellectual property theft, subterfuge, subversion, infiltration, and through things like the 1,000 Talents program, infiltration, they live their lives here in some cases, but sometimes they send information back to the Chinese military, right? They get into academia, they get into all the medical sciences, the scientific sectors of the United States, and sometimes they feed that information back to China, where they then put it to work in order to build their own offensive weapons platforms based on the technology and the intel they get from us, as well as the defensive platforms, right? No different than what we're doing. We're all doing the same thing. It's a race to dominate via technology. That's the name of the game nowadays. Guys, I promise you, if you're thinking I'm just rambling about it, this is so relevant, just stick with me, okay? If you really care about this story, I think you'll pay attention to this. That's the name of the game. That's what we're seeing now. Major push to secure our agricultural space, to secure our food security in a world of hybrid threats with technology that is becoming increasingly powerful, increasingly available to the average citizen. We are more likely to be the victims of a biological attack using weaponized insects before we are victims of a nuclear bomb, okay? It's not like there isn't a precedent for weaponizing crops or destroying crops as a method of warfare. It's a lot easier to win a battle or a war if you just starve the people so they can't fight, or perhaps slowly poison them via the food. This is why these stories are important. And think about the size of the purchase here. This was how many acres? Just a few hundred? Guys, Flannery bought 60,000 acres. And how far away was this plot of land from Grand Forks? It was like several miles away from the base. And this was of immediate concern. And yet Flannery buys 60,000 acres and surrounds the base, right pushing up against the fence, and is handled completely different. Interesting. I find that interesting.
And this property sits just about 20 minutes down the road.
20 minutes, guys. Jesus, 20 minutes? People might be thinking, how's that a threat? I'm just saying, compare this to what's going on in Solano County.
More than 300 acres of prime farmland. Earlier this year, 3 North Dakotans who owned parcels here sold this land for millions of dollars to a subsidiary of a Chinese company that says it wants to build a corn milling plant.
Now that transaction has come under scrutiny here in Washington, D.C., where some in the intelligence community warn that the deal should be blocked because it could offer Chinese spies unprecedented access to the American base.
It's an only in America kind of fight, pitting the property and economic rights of a community against national security warnings from high-ranking officials in the nation's capital. The Chinese company at the heart of the controversy is the Fufeng Group, based in Shandong, China. Its American subsidiary says the company is not a threat.
So isn't it an interesting dynamic? Here we have a representative, and, that's not a Chinese man. He doesn't look like a threat, but the threats aren't just necessarily meaning like threats to physical damage, right, or an attack. Passive surveillance is an issue, and if you purchase land near a base, especially for something like a corn milling plant, that could give you valuable insights to what's going on the base, troop movements, deployments, how they work. So this is all very important. Passive surveillance, you can get a lot from just being in the proximity of a base that's working on some very cool, very secretive, exotic technologies such as the Global Hawk and like unmanned aerial systems.
The Air Force hasn't taken any official position on the Chinese investment, but an Air Force major composed an alarming memo in April obtained by CNBC laying out what he believes to be the intelligence threat.
This is a great memo. I suggest you guys read it because, he goes deep into why this is a threat and why it's absurd to let something like this go through and why it needs to be stopped.
He wrote, some of the most sensitive elements of Grand Forks exist with the digital uplinks and downlinks inherent with unmanned air systems and their interaction with space-based assets.
Space-based assets. Okay, so what are the 2 points here when it comes to technology and Grand Forks Air Force Base in North Dakota? Unmanned aerial system, research, development, application, space-based assets, and of course, the digital uplinks and downlinks, communications lines and such to these assets. Okay, so just keep that in mind. You're going to see some repeating themes here for those of you paying attention. So we have a adversary nation that coincidentally buys sensitive land next to Air Force Base working on the same technology that China is also scrambling to master and dominate as we are. Okay.
The Air Force says Major Jeremy Fox was only speaking for himself, but he's not the only one with security concern. In a report released May 26th, the U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission wrote, "The location of the land close to the base is particularly convenient for monitoring air traffic flows in and out of the base, among other security-related concerns." That's why Senator Kevin Cramer says he opposes the project in his own state, despite the economic benefits it might bring.
So let's go back over to the Landgate video. So now you get a little bit of the context. Craig here, spot on by saying, people are concerned about Bill Gates's agricultural purchases. Lots of farmland, all within the same time frame, anywhere from 2015 to, 2020, 2021. Decent amount of farmland purchases. Simultaneously, within that same block of time, we have the agricultural purchases of the Chinese firm here. And then, of course, 2018, Flannery Associates begins their land acquisitions in an agricultural space next to Travis. Simultaneously to that, we have entities like DARPA, the tip of the spear, the ones that develop the technology that our military uses to protect us and our nation and make sure that they're the dopest war fighters that the world has seen, Right now, they're currently working on not just unmanned aerial systems, but they're also working on genetic modification of crops and food product in order to protect from next generation threats. The U.S. Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, that's DARPA, they're located in Arlington, Virginia. They've got this program, Insect Allies. It aims to use insects such as aphids or whiteflies to infect crops with tailor-made viruses that can deliver certain genes to mature plants. In other words, it's gene modification, it's gene therapy for plants. It sounds like science fiction. This Science.org article says, a research program funded by the U.S. government plans to create virus-carrying insects released in vast numbers. The point is that they could help crops fight threats, whether it's pests, drought, or pollution. That's Insect Allies. Pretty cool. Now, there is some fears that this sparked as well. What if it goes wrong? What type of viruses are we talking about here? They also note that the paper is likely to touch off another round in the long-running debate about the dual use research of concern. Did I not mention that earlier? All of this is being driven by how fast technology is developing and how powerful that technology is, and also how available it is to just you and I. And they call that dual use capabilities. This is an iPhone. You could sit back, watch Netflix on it, you can text your friends, you can send memes on it, but you could also engage in asymmetrical warfare tactics such as information warfare. You could spread propaganda on this. You can sow doubt in America's democracy with this. You can, with a single message, if you're lucky and the algorithm likes you, reach the minds and masses and thoughts of millions of people in an instant with this. That's dual-use technology. It's not made to be a weapon, but it can be used as an incredibly damaging weapon. All right, these are silent weapons for quiet wars. That's not the only thing they're doing, though. Plants are also actively being turned into integrated sensor systems. As I said, Internet of Things, the merging of the physical world with the digital world with the physical world is the chief driver of change in all of this, because this now leaves our most vital infrastructure, things like the electrical grid, our cyber systems, whether it's for defense or even commercial activity or transit or commerce, anything. Those are all increasingly vulnerable to attack. Attacks, by the way, that can be perpetrated by dual-use technologies like phones. An average individual can derail an entire nation if they were to attack an electrical grid with a cell phone, with a laptop. That's the world we are now in. We're also in a pandemic world, so that's why DARPA is also working on advanced plant technologies. That's what they call this program, APT, Advanced Plant Technologies. The Advanced Plant Technologies Program seeks to develop plants capable of serving as next-generation persistent ground-based sensor technologies to protect deployed troops and the homeland, note the homeland, by detecting and reporting chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive threats. Okay? Such biological sensors would be effectively energy independent, increasing their potential for wide distribution while also reducing risks associated with deployment and maintenance of, the regular sensors. And they have in mind, supporting humanitarian operations by, for example, detecting unexploded ordnance, things like that. One of the primary, most concerning strategic threats that also ties into the homeland is no longer a sanctuary doctrine change is climate change, right? How do we fortify our bases, not just from hypersonic missiles, Chinese surveillance, unmanned aerial drone systems as used for surveillance? How do we fortify them from wildfires? How do we make sure floods won't wipe them out? How do we prevent another repeat of Tyndall Air Force Base, for example?
Michael ravaged the Gulf Coast, and now crews are working to clear the devastation, and that will take a long time.
A Category 4, it was almost a Category 5. It's responsible for 7 deaths in Florida, Georgia, and now North Carolina. And this is drone video from Tyndall Air Force Base in Panama City Beach, which took a direct hit from Michael. The base commander ordered a mandatory evacuation on Monday, and the base remains closed except for emergency personnel. The storm brought down power lines and trees and tore off roofs on the base. My nephew is a commander of stealth fighters there, and he has been taken out and trying to find some place to live during the course of all of this. That's the kind of destruction that all of these military people are facing.
Look at all the planes in there that have just moved together and crushed together.
It's amazing they couldn't get that out, knowing that this storm was coming.
It was coming.
Two days before Hurricane Michael's landfall, Tyndall Air Force Base was in full preparation, running through its hurricane condition checklist.
Prepped aircraft. We flew about half the fleet out on Monday. First light on the 9th, we launched out the rest of the aircraft that we had. So by 1500 or 3 o'clock on the 9th, this place was a ghost town, and all that was left was the 93 of us who stayed behind.
Base Commander Colonel Brian Laidlaw and the rest of the 93 hunkered down in 2 of the strongest buildings.
We lost our roof in the first half of the storm. We heard the roof peel off. We started taking on a bit of water. It was just scattered with debris in every direction. I'll tell you, we weren't really saying a lot. There wasn't really a lot to say. It was a pretty sobering picture to try to digest.
It was devastating.
And Tyndall is going to be a key pivot point where we get into the real intriguing stuff here. This is all groundwork right now. Climate change. That's the name of the game, resiliency. We got to build resilient infrastructure, even on our military bases, to ensure that we can protect both the nation and our bases. Climate change. Don't have much power to project if you're all flooded out, if your base is on fire. What I am saying is that Flannery Associates' dash for 60,000 acres around Travis is unfolding in this context.